In this lesson, I want to show you something. We're going to be adding replies, right? But first, I want to log out and show you how the application behaves. So right here, I'm just going to have discussions, and you can see that this discussion spans the whole screen when the user is not logged in. So what we want to do is we actually want to come back to our resources, views, layouts, and we can't have this template only when the user is not authenticated, or only when the user is authenticated. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply cut this out and paste it right here, which means it's going to be used whether the user is authenticated or not. Okay, and what we're going to do is modify this sidebar to adapt to if the user is authenticated or not. So for example, if the user is not authenticated, we are going to come to the sidebar, which is right here, and then instead of saying add discussion, we're going to say sign in to add discussion. Okay, so we can say if auth else and auth, and then if the user is authenticated, we can have the add discussion button. Else, we're gonna have a button to add to sign in. So we're gonna say sign in to add discussion, and this is going to go to the login route right there, like that. So if I refresh, since I'm not signed in, you can see it says sign in to add discussion, and I'm redirected to the sign in page. So what we want to do is, if the user is viewing the sign in, the login or register page, or any of the authentication routes like forgot your password, we don't want to display this sidebar, okay, so that the sign in page is not messed up. So what we can do is we can have our check if, and then else and if. So I'm going to paste it right here. So if the user is not on any of the pages with specific routes, I'm just going to edit. Let me just put true right here so it doesn't break anything. And then I'm going to show you something. Right here, I'm going to echo request path. Okay. So if I refresh, you can see we have the register path right here. And then if I go to the login screen, we have the login path. If I go to the forgot password, we have password/reset path. So what we want to do is check if request path, or if in array request path, and then we'll pass in an array of paths where the navigation should be shown. And then else, we're just going to have main.container.py4, and I don't think we need a container in the else case. And here we're just going to yield contents. So what we are doing right here is we're getting the request path, and then we are checking if it's login register password/email password/reset. Okay, so if in array of the request path, then we should do this. So what we actually want is if not in array. So this is what happens. The user visits the application, we get the request path. It could be login, it could be register, it could be password reset, or it could be discussions. So we check if the request path is one of these. If it's not one of these, then we go ahead and display the template with the sidebar navigation. Else, we display simply the normal template. Let me show you what that does. If I refresh right now, you can see we are resetting password, so this navigation is gone because one of the routes, which is password/reset, is in this array. Okay, so if we go to the register, you cannot see the sidebar because it's in this array. If we go to the login, you can also see the sidebar because it's in this array. But if we go to the discussions, great, we can see the sidebar because this path is not in this array. Awesome. So this is how you can customize your templates to have the desired functionality. So if you click on sign in to add functionality or to add discussion, we can go ahead and log in. Awesome. So now on the dashboard, we can see the add discussion button. Now, another thing I want to change in the application is when the user is logged in, the user is redirected to the home page. What we want is that the user should be redirected to the discussions page. So let me show you that. We are going to come to our register controller, which is in the auth directory. And then what we can do is we can actually modify where the user is redirected to. In this case, discussions. Every time the user is registered, the user will be redirected to discussions. Then in our login controller, we can also do exactly the same thing. We can say the user should be redirected to discussions. And finally, in our middleware for redirect if authenticated, whenever a user is trying to visit a route like login or register when the user is already authenticated, the user is going to be redirected back to discussions. Let me show you that. If I come right now and I try to visit discussions, everything is fine. If I visit login, you can see I'm redirected back to discussions. Okay. If I try to visit register, it redirects me back to discussions. Awesome. Now, finally, let's go to the subject matter of the day. We need to be able to add replies. Okay. So what we're going to do is on the single discussion page, we're going to add a button that says add a reply, or we're going to add a tricks editor for adding a reply. So I'm going to come to the show.blade. After the card for a discussion, I'm going to have another card. So dot card, and here I'm going to have a dot card header, and this is going to say add a reply. And then in the card body, I'm going to have a tricks editor. So let me show you right there. If I refresh, you can see we have add a reply, and I'll give this a margin Y of 5. Refresh. Now, what we want to do is add a tricks form. So I'm just going to come right here and we're going to have a form, and this is going to be method of post. And then we're also going to add a CSRF token, CSRF. We're going to have a tricks editor. So tricks editor, and the input is going to be equal to reply. And then remember, we need to add a hidden input. Type equals hidden, name is reply, ID is reply, like that. So if I come back, refresh, of course the tricks editor does not show up because we haven't added the CSS and JS for it. So I'm going to go to the create for discussion, and then make sure I copy the CSS and JavaScript for the tricks editor and also add it to the show so that we can use it in the reply. Great. So you can see right now we have our tricks editor. This is the form for adding a reply. Okay. But we only want this form to show up if the user is logged in. Okay. So what we can do is we can say auth, else, and auth. And then if the user is authenticated, we show the form. And then else, we simply show a button that says sign in to add a reply. So we can say a.button.button info. And then this is going to say route login. And this is simply going to say sign in to add a reply. Okay. So if we refresh this page right now, since the user is logged in, they can see the form. But if I log out, visit the discussions page, and then view a discussion, I can see sign in to add a reply to be able to actually add a reply. Okay. Now, since I want the styling for this button to be used everywhere, so if I go to the app.blade.php, you can see right here, I use the stylings inline. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this out, and then at the top, I'm going to add some star tags, and then the button info class is going to have a color of white. Okay. And then this one right here for the add discussion, I'm just going to make sure the width is 100%. And I'll copy that and also duplicate it right here. If I refresh, awesome. So we have signed in to add a reply, and it takes the user to the sign in page. Let me just go ahead and log in. If we view a conversation, we can have the add reply form right there. I'm just going to go back to the show.blade.php and make sure we have a submit button for that. So button.button success, and then this is just gonna say create reply or add reply, and the type is going to be submit. If we refresh, great, we have the add reply button. I'm just gonna make this button smaller, and I'm just gonna give it a margin Y of 2. Awesome. So we can see the add reply button right there. Now we need to be able to submit the add reply so that a user can create a reply. So I'm just gonna say @make controller replies controller, and then I'm going to add a resource. Awesome. So now we're gonna go to the web.php and register that resource for replies. So we're gonna have discussions, and then the discussion ID, and then we're gonna have replies. Okay, which means that the resource for replies is always gonna depend on the discussion. Okay, so discussions, then discussion, then replies. And if you want to make sure the route list is registered as expected, you can run route list, and then if you see right here, for all of the replies routes, we have the discussion right there. Awesome. Which means if we come to show.blade.php and we define the routes for creating replies, so replies.store, what we're gonna have to do is actually pass the ID of the discussion. So we're gonna say discussion ID, but remember we changed route model binding so that it uses the slug to find the discussion. So we're gonna pass the discussion slug instead, so that it finds the discussion using that slug. And the reason why we can do this is, remember in our migration we said the discussion slug should be unique, so we can use it to find discussions from the database. Awesome. So now if I refresh, we have the add reply. If we view the page source and check out that form, you can see it submits to discussion / the slug and then replies. Awesome. So now that we have that, in the very next lesson we are going to save this reply to the database and then display a list of replies for discussions. Thank you so much, and see you then.